All right, welcome to Q3 Week 1. This is day 2. Your love is like a roller coaster feeling, baby. Oh, actually, I don't even know if those are the actual lyrics, but I'm going to go with it. You're welcome, by the way. So today, we're going to work on a roller coaster. All right. Yesterday, we created the path for our arrow, and we stuck an orange, and then we flew the orange around a little bit, and then we landed back on the platform. Today, we're going to take that same concept. We're going to make a roller coaster out of that path. So we're going to copy the path. We're going to use linking to add a camera to the arrow. You can actually see the arrowhead down there. That's going to be the front part of our roller coaster. And then we are going to modify the camera to follow the arrow, and then we're going to make a track. Like, that's the basic idea. So let's get to it. So on day 1, Q3 Week 1, day 1, we ended up like this. We had our orange, we had an arrow. If you scrub through, the arrow flies around, hits the orange, drops it off. Awesome. Now, what was important is, for this, we made sure that as we did this, the arrow was smoothly flowing around. We also made sure that if you loop it, it goes right back into where it starts. So that's really nice. We did that partly so that our roller coaster would work well. Now, another thing we did yesterday is we looked at our spline here, and we made sure that as we did that, we adjusted it. Okay, so we adjusted it, made sure it was pretty smooth. Now, with a roller coaster, you don't want that spline to intersect with another spline. So we're going to have to do a little bit of massaging here. We're going to move some of this around, and we want to do this before. So I'm going to look at the top view, and I'm going to try and find anywhere where it looks like our things are going to overlap, even a little bit. All right, that way we can sort of control it early. And I'm going to turn snapping off because I have snapping on. There we go. Even here. So before we needed this to sort of align through the same area. This time I do not want it to align to the same area. I want to make sure I keep them separated. You got to keep them separated because otherwise they'll crash into each other, and that's no good. I would also worry about this one here. Maybe bring that in a little bit. And let's see. All right, that looks good. We can always adjust this later. So for maybe not. Maybe down here we'd probably need to adjust this some too. Yep, I'm gonna bring that up like that. All right, cool. That should be pretty good. I don't think anything intersects. We'll see better in a minute. It looks okay. Looks okay. So from the front view, we are going to look at what we have. So we've got our spline here, our path. What we need to do now is we need to get rid of some of the pieces we're not going to be using. So go into your Manage Layers, and we're going to go to our background objects, and we're going to hide. We can just hide the whole layer since we're not going to use it. You can minimize that and go back into your mesh layer. Notice the mesh layer is active. That's going to be important in a minute. We're going to get rid of the orange because we're not going to use it. The path we're going to keep, and then the reference layer is all the reference planes that we're not using right now. So they're hidden too. All right, great. Close that up. Cool. So now what we need to do is create a track out of this. We want to create an actual track that we can follow along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Create tab, and I'm going to create a rectangle. Okay. Now there's two types of creation methods, whether you create it from the center or from the edge. Either one works. I'm going to create it from the center, hit snapping, S, and I'm going to just go to the center here and then expand out a little bit. Now I don't want to go crazy, and if it doesn't work right, make sure you turn snapping off. Sometimes you may have to turn snapping off, otherwise it'll be too big. And now I'm going to rescale this a little bit so it's about that big. I want it to be kind of small, maybe 20 centimeters by, I don't know, 3 or 4, whatever it is. It's going to be small. I guess that's about 5. No, that's more like 4. It doesn't really matter. What really matters, length is, sure, let's do it. And 10, and my width will be, looks like 40. Okay, cool. That looks fine. Actually, let's knock it down to like 30. Oops, 30. And instead of 10, let's do 7. I changed my mind. I changed it to 5. Okay, so length is 5, width is 30. If you want to follow along and do the exact same numbers, that is fine. If not, no biggie. Okay, so we could change the corner radius if we want, so it's more rounded. That could be cool. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that. This was not part of the plan, but I'm going to set it to 2 and see how that looks. That could be cool. All right, great. This is called Rectangle 01, and that's fine for now because it's probably going to lose its name when we loft it. So what we've done is we've created a shape. Now, originally, my original plan was to right-click, convert it to an editable spline, and then modify it. But the Bezier corners that it creates sometimes can be can give you a big headache. So we're going to ignore that for now and just use this shape that we created. So we have our rectangle 01. Now what we want to do is actually have it follow along this spline. So we are going to loft it. Sorry about that bell. That's really annoying. All right. So we're going to loft it. So we're going to go into the create, and we're going to go in geometry, and we're going to select from compound objects, which is the third one down. So select that, and we're looking for loft. Now we have the shape. All right, this is our shape that we're going to make. Now we need the path, or where it's going to flow, and that is right here. We're going to select get path, and then select the path. All right, now if you look at it, it automatically creates a path that sort of goes around. I'm going to turn my grid off so we can see a little better. So it automatically creates a path that follows the shape. Now, it's all good, except it doesn't quite fit that way, does it? See how everything's up here and things aren't quite aligned. The reason is it seems to be better when you create a loft to grab the original object, the path first, and then loft to and get the shape like that. Because what that does is it makes sure the path stays where it is, and then you're getting the shape to add to the path. All right. So let's go into our editable our modifier list. So right now it's called loft 01. I'm going to call it track. Okay. Now my arrow is actually still following along. You can't really see it though because it's sort of adjusted there, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now you can actually adjust it so that the contour is on or off, and the banking is on or off. The contour I think is very important. Banking, however, is going to be less important. Banking would be great, especially for the path itself, but the problem is we get the issue right here at the end where the banking doesn't quite line up. You can see our arrow following along. So if we turn banking off, that sort of fixes our problem here. If we adjust contour, or if we don't adjust contour, it won't adjust its shape. So whenever we're going sideways, it gets really weird. So we want to make sure we do activate the contour, but banking will kind of break it. So it's going to be more of a road than a roller coaster, which is okay. Now I'm looking for any sort of part that overlaps because that will be awkward, and I don't see any. So basically I've got myself a little racetrack here. It's going to be all right. All right, cool. So now what we want to do is we still have all of the animation we had before. Okay, the arrow is still flowing around. It's doing just fine. So now what we need to do is we need to create a camera. Now last week, and when we've created cameras before, they've always been target cameras because you want to be able to target what the camera's looking at. However, in this case, we're not going to worry about a target. We're going to create a camera and then have the track sort of lead our camera wherever it needs to go. Actually, we're going to snap it to the arrow. So from the top view, I'm going to go in the top view, and I'm going to come up here to cameras and create a free camera. Okay, and then I can just click that and it's done. Now I create it from the top, so maybe that's not a good idea. I'll create it from that. There, that's better. From the front, I create it so it's looking down Y. Alright, so now what I need to do is I need to link this camera to the arrow. So I'm going to link this camera to the arrow. So once again, just like we did before, we're going to go to the motion tab and we're going to link it. Right? So we are going to go to the transform and we are adding a link constraint, clicking OK. And we are going to, from the very beginning, we're going to add link and we're going to find our arrow and click it. All right. Now, turn that off. Now the camera's going to move around with it. Okay? Now notice, as it moves around, the camera is all over the place, right? We need to now align the camera so that it aligns with the arrow. And we can do that relatively easily by going to Align. We already have that selected, so we need to align it to that. Okay? We're going to align it with all these axes. Let's see. That's good. It's going the wrong way. Alright. The position is the important part. So we'll get the position first, and then we'll adjust the other part. Okay. Close. Now, we could have, what we need to do actually is invert this. So I'm going to actually rotate this around by 90 degrees. Or 180 degrees. Okay. Now, W. Was that local? It was. Okay, good. So, good. I should have been moving it on its local axis. On the world axis, actually. Okay, so change that to world. I'm going to spin this around 180 degrees. And now it should be set on its world. On its local should be rotated. There. So now it's positive Y. So now I can align it. So we click Align, which is up here. These two little rectangles next to Align. Click there. And we're going to adjust by pivot points, which is good. Well, the position is good. Adjust it X, Y, and Z. Click Apply. Click OK. And now our world, our local axis, I'm going to rotate it again since it didn't take last time. 180 degrees. Okay, cool. Now, I adjusted it. Now I'm going to go into my local and move it. Turn snapping off. Move it up a little bit. Alright, and now we need to look through that camera to make sure what we're getting is good. So I'm going to look at it from camera 1 here, and we're going to have it shaded and see how it looks. Alright, so we've got this, so it's definitely following along. Let's see where it's going. Alright, cool. So it sort of follows along. It's going to be great. Now, watching this by itself, pretty boring. Right? Actually, let's go turn this to camera 1 and do this as perspective. So, there we go. So we've got that set up. I apologize for the unhealthiness. So you can see the camera falls around. It is just linked to the arrow. The arrow is still doing all of its work. There, we can actually watch it through here. Alright, so the arrow is doing all of the work. Change this to shaded. See, make sure the arrow is not popping out in a weird way. Okay, so we're just sort of following along. You can see the arrow pops out, so what we'll do is we'll hide the arrow. Originally I was going to use it to sort of our initial directional point, but since we don't really need it, let's get rid of it. Mesh. Where's my arrow? Well, hidden. There. Now we can hide it and it's still just fine. It's going to work just fine. You just won't see it anymore. Alright, great. So we have our path. Now, the last thing we need to do before we render is we need to, I'm going to hit Alt-W and go back to full screen. What we're going to do now is we're going to merge a file. Now we actually had, I've got a bunch of information, a whole setup from another file. So you can do this with your other stuff, or you can use mine. I'm actually going to import from another 3D file, which is merge. Okay, so I'm going to go up. Let's see, 15, 16 classes, 3D, linking. All right, so we are going to call this one, actually, I want to rename this so that we have the same file. Let's call it merge file. There. That way you know exactly which one you're trying to get. So you're getting merge file, and you're going to open, and it's going to ask you what you want to add in. We're going to add in all the clouds, all the dirts. Okay? We're going to leave the path. We're going to leave all this other stuff. Just bring that stuff in and click OK. After a second, it's going to work. We're going to go back into perspective, change the wireframe to shaded, and now you'll notice the whole thing we've got like a little scene. Right? It's not great, but it should work. It should at least give us the sense of what's going on. Now you'll notice that now my dirt or my track goes into the ground, and we cannot have that. We can actually modify that by going into the Modify tab, clicking Loft, clicking Path, clicking Line, and then clicking the verts themselves. So what we want to do now is find where it's going into the path. I'm going to have to zoom using the zoom tool. And then I'm going to hit F3. This right here is what I need to grab. You can see that vertice right there. I'm going to hit F3 again, and I'm going to pull it up so it runs just like that. It'll actually be kind of cool that it actually comes real close to the ground. So there we go. Now without these mountains and clouds and further mountains, the whole thing will feel very odd because you won't have any sort of sense of scale. This will give you something to look at as you ride around on your roller coaster. All right. Also, I'm going to change the color of this thing because blue, that's kind of lame. Like a gray. Maybe a hot pink. Hot pink's kind of cool. All right, let's try that. All right, so now I can adjust this, go to cameras, camera 1, and then I can play through it and see how it looks. All right. It's pretty fast. I don't think I'd like to view this in the Oculus, but you sort of get the idea. Once again, your video will vary drastically depending on how curvy your track was, but generally you'll get the idea. All right. Now, to render this out, go ahead and we're going to hit F10 to adjust rendering settings, and we're going to make sure we do the active time segment, which is all 300 frames. We're going to come down here to HD TV video and set it to 1280 by 720, which is a little smaller than we usually go because I don't want big files. Now the big thing is you got to make sure you go to render output and then hit files, because it may be set up to my file or my file system, and that's not going to work for you. So find a place you can save it. I'm going to save it in my linking. I'm going to call it Coaster 2. Coaster 2, and then I'm going to go to all formats, click AVI, and then I'm calling it Coaster 2. You're going to call it the period you're in, underscore, last name, underscore, coaster. That'll be fine. So hit save, and then it'll ask you what type of compressor. I like MPEG compressor, and I leave it to 75% or 75 quality, and click OK. And now you're ready to render. So you can start rendering, and then it'll slowly render. So if you don't have all of these materials, I tried to basically create these materials out of systems that were already in 3D Studio. So they should come in with the file. If not, I'm also going to put the FBX file in there. The orange is also inside the folder with all the other files, so you can adjust it as well. But that's it. That's it for today. You'll let this render out, and then you'll have a cool video to take home and show your mama, and she'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. But that's it. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave comments. leave them in the comments. Make sure you get the files if you need them. They're also just under the video in the information part where you can click see more to get more. That's it. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.